Welcome to this final event on the FORCE project, where we would like to share our findings with you on this project that we have been carried out for about 4.5 years. This project is the Cities Cooperating for Circular Economy, or FORCE for short. And we are 4 cities in the project. We are Copenhagen, we are Hamburg, Genoa and Lisbon. And in the project, we are also 22 partners from the entire value chain of the 4 waste materials in the project. And these 4 waste materials, they are plastics, they are metals from electrical and electronic products. They are surplus food and bio-waste and wood waste. And each city has set up 4 partnerships for each of these 4 materials. So in total, we have had 16 partnerships on the project. And now we're ready to present some of our final results to you. This is a different setting than the one we had planned for, but we have done our best to make it as lively as possible, and so that we can make it more like a conference. And today we are broadcasting this from Blocks Hub in Copenhagen. We are co-creating this event with them. And as you can see, we have this beautiful view over the city of Copenhagen from this place. And now to you, to the audience, we really like to have your feedback during this afternoon and tomorrow morning. We hope that you would be interested in using the chat function to raise questions or make comments. And so we would really like to have some exchange of information during these 2 half days. So I would like to welcome all of you to this event, and I hope we will have some good time together. And to steer us through this event, we have invited Savas Verdis from the London School of Economics to be our moderator. So I would like to say welcome, Savas. You are online. Thank you, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Mette. Unfortunately, I don't have a beautiful harbor to show, just the back wall of my bedroom. But these are the times that we live in.
It is.
So it's very exciting for me to participate in this. I direct a program at the LSE called the Executive Masters in Cities. We will bring city leaders from across the world to accelerate change in their cities. And one of the key dimensions that we take is systems change. And when I was invited to moderate the discussion, I was very excited by the approach that all of the 4 cities have taken, because they really do think about how to change this linear system, dominant linear system, through many different approaches, whether it's through policy, regulation, market making, and changing mindsets, which are all very important dimensions. Now, for the purposes of today, as you know, this session will be delivered in 2 half days. For today, think of 3 chunks that we will be going through. The first are very much 3 scene-setting presentations from colleagues from organizations that are at the center of the circular economy, the EU Executive Agency for SMEs, Eurocities, and finally the Circle economy. In the second part, we will be actually introducing the 2 work streams, and the first ones are the bio-waste and surplus food, with the lead being the city of Lisbon, and domestic plastics, with the lead being Copenhagen. And for these sessions and the work streams, we'll first be looking at a video produced of their key findings, a short presentation from the lead city, and then a Q&A. And finally, we will end the day with a discussion and presentation by the General Secretary of ISOCARP on the role of planners in this wider objectives. Finally, in terms of housekeeping, as you know, housekeeping in the virtual conferences is very different. So no need to worry about fire escapes or fire exits. There's no need for that. Dogs, cats, kids, bomb crashing the screen is fine as well. All is permitted. If you want to ask questions, please use the Q&A functionality rather than the chat functionality. It will make my life much easier. And of course, if you want to participate with a question for the panelists, please raise your hand so that we can expedite the process. I hope that is clear. I'll be relatively strict in terms of the timekeeping because we have a lot of exciting presentation. So I would first like to ask Katie Mederova-Bergstrom from the EU Executive Agency for SMEs to kickstart our day with a presentation on partnering for a brighter future. Katie, the floor is all yours.
Yes, hello everybody. I hope that you're hearing me well. I'm also here in Brussels in my home, but hopefully the connection will be good and we'll enjoy the afternoon together. My name is Katie Mederova-Bergstrom. I'm a senior project advisor at the Executive Agency for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises at the European Commission. And we have been managing and monitoring the FORCE project since the very beginning. So thank you very much for this kind invitation. I will not give a formal presentation. I would like to say a few words on why projects like FORCE are important for the European Commission and the EU and for the program Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation and what we would like to achieve. And I would like to start by remembering back in 2016 when we were all in the beginning of the FORCE project and we took this journey together. I'm very pleased to be now at the end of it and I'm really looking forward to hearing today and tomorrow its main results and achievements and hope for a good constructive discussion. So I've been asked to say a few words about why projects like FORCE are important for us. And I would like to start by saying that Horizon Europe, when it was Horizon 2020, when it was started back in 2014, had one big change in comparison to previous research and innovation programs, and it was the, let's say, the more advanced focus on innovation and large-scale demonstration. And FORCE and other projects were funded back in 2015 in dedicated calls that were aiming exactly at this kind of, let's say, different type of innovations, trying to actually bring innovations closer to the end users, closer to the market, and thereby achieving real tangible impacts on societies, economies, and the environment, of course. So we would like to see bigger projects with bigger impact. Then why the role of cities? Well, clearly, cities have a role to play in transformation, societal transformations, and as part of that is also the transformations towards bringing and moving from a linear to a circular economy. And clearly, we see that cities have a major role, not just as local regulators or permit authorizers, but they have other roles to play, such as mobilizing other actors along the value chain, organizing partnerships, being closer to citizens, which are the end user, the final customers of many products. And then we also see them as key actors that can mobilize R&D actors, businesses, and other stakeholders. So what we would like to achieve, essentially, our philosophy is that we would like to have a systemic approach, something that Savas mentioned. And in these large-scale demonstration projects, we focus not fully on, let's say, technological innovations and only on technological innovations. Of course, we want to see new technologies, improvements of technologies, the infrastructure needed for the circular economy implementation. But we would like to go beyond that. And cities are a natural landscape and ecosystem for driving other types of innovations as well. And this is something very much that we see in FORCE as well. Innovations related to new governance models, social innovations, and so on. And this is really essential because these are key elements on how systemic transformation must be delivered. All of these elements must be really addressed. Another interesting thing is that we have went through a process ourselves, realizing that we need to move beyond waste. So, for example, back in 2015, when FORCE was funded, under a dedicated core topic, it was really focused on how to manage waste in cities. But FORCE, for example, was very innovative already at their proposal stage, because they went beyond that and started talking and advancing about circular economy in cities. And throughout the years, we ourselves have also launched other calls for proposals that are moving beyond waste. We're talking now about other sectors, other important areas such as food and buildings, and really capturing the uniqueness of the city as an ecosystem that has many elements, that all of them need to be addressed in order to be able to bring this transformative agenda that we really need. And of course, with that, we would like to really see that EU funding for research and innovation delivers tangible and multiple impacts. So impacts, because we know also that even environmental issues related to resource efficiency, circular economy, climate change, biodiversity are all interlinked. So of course, we want to see interdisciplinary action, interrelated actions, systemic approach that can then deliver different impacts on the environment, but also on the economies and also job creation. So I know that there will be some time for questions after that. I would not take too much time more, but I would just like to conclude that, well, we are also looking at more investments in research and innovation in cities for the circular and bioeconomy. And one, let's say, yeah, I'm sure that the audience of this workshop is aware of under the Green Deal Code that is closing today. There was a big topic on territorial deployment for circular solutions. And this trend will also be continued in the Future Horizon Europe program. And this is something that my colleague Hans Christian Everell from DGR and I will be telling you more in tomorrow's. But to conclude now, I would like to just say that, yeah, indeed, we perceive cities as having a great potential to drive and deliver the transformations towards the circular economy through innovation, research and innovation, big priority for us. This is where we have been investing and will be investing even in the future. This is where we can definitely gain a lot of productivity, efficiency, and enhance the so much important value chain partnerships that the FORCE projects has been demonstrating benefits from, and through knowledge sharing, of course, because we think that projects like FORCE have obviously provided interesting insights on what works well, what works less well, and this is what we want to see really, and to be able to then exploit in policy making and into further projects in the field. And so in this sense, yeah, disseminating largely results from these projects, building more networks, establishing more links between cities, sharing good practices is essential. And therefore, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the project results in this conference today and tomorrow, and looking forward to a constructive discussion. Thank you very much. That's all from me for now, and looking forward to any questions you may have.
Katie, thank you so much. We will actually, if you could stay with us, we will probably take questions at the end of this session, but we've taken good notes on your key ideas here, the role of cities, the multiple roles that they have in the circular economy, the cross-sectional approach and cross-sectorial approach moving beyond waste, and how the circular economy has evolved over the last decade. I think also, for us, to think about these governance questions and across the different levels of governance. What can city, national, and transnational levels do, and how they can kind of coordinate action together? Because a lot of the times, cities end up on the end of a wider global value chain and often ask questions, how can wider levels of governance coordinate action? So I think, these are important questions, and if you could stay with us, we will probably, get some further questions on this. Let's move on to our second scene-setting presentation, and this is from Luis Cofino, who is a policy advisor at Eurocities. And the title of the presentation is Boosting Circularity in Cities and the very exciting European Green Deal. Louise, welcome.
Hear me?
Hello, Louise. Yes.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon. And I think you can see my screen now as well.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So good afternoon. Thanks a lot for the introduction. My name is Luis Cofino. I'm indeed a policy advisor for environment and climate at Eurocities. It's a membership-based association made of more than 190 European cities. We aim at supporting cities in their transition to make a better future for all. I have been kindly asked to talk about boosting circularity in cities with the European Green Deal in this presentation. So I will try to highlight some key elements, and I will start going a bit a step further of what have been said already. Indeed, cities can do a lot, but I do believe that cities are climate leaders, sustainability leaders. You may know that since 2008, 10,000 towns and cities have been pledging to the Covenant of Mayors to deliver climate and energy transition to their citizens. Even before the publication of the Green Deal with its famous EU climate law, 64% of Eurocities members had already committed to reach climate neutrality by 2050. Among them, 14 members, 14 cities have committed to reach it even before 2040. We're talking about 19 years from now, very, very ambitious. And then we all know 2020 has arrived. Cities had to move mountains to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. Cities have proven that systemic transformation can happen in a very short space of time, but how does it translate into the big ongoing transformations of our societies and of our time? What about circular transformation? If we want to build cities that are more able to cope with the upcoming challenges, be the pandemics, next pandemics, or floods or earthquakes, there are many lessons to be taken from the recent month and the recent year. And one of the lessons learned, if I can say, is that far from deviating from their sustainable goals, the COVID-19 crisis has reinforced the belief of EU mayors that they could transform an unprecedented social, health, economic crisis into the opportunity to turn to a more sustainable and inclusive and circular future. And in other words, if I can say, how can we build back better and learn from the recent month? At Eurocities, for instance, we do believe that circular economy should be at the core of the COVID-19 recovery. During the outbreak of the pandemics, you may know that the European Commission has published its own circular economy action plan. In fact, it's a good day for this action plan because this morning the European Parliament has voted in favor of the report led by the Dutch Liberal member of the Parliament in favor of going from this linear economy to a circular economy. So it's a good day. It's a good day for this circular economy action plan. So in this circular economy action plan, we had a set of initiatives to accelerate the transition to circular economy. I've listed a couple. This is just a few. Those probably of high interest for cities: the Sustainable Product Policy Initiative, the Right to Repair, the model, the EU-wide harmonized model for separate collection of waste, restriction on microplastics, a new policy framework for bio-based, biodegradable and compostable plastics, an EU strategy for circular textile, and a strategy for sustainable environment. This is just to name a few, link with what's coming afterwards. So having that in mind, having there's a set of initiatives in mind, let's see what are the opportunities for cities. How can they use the circular economy and the circular economy action plan of the Commission to build back in a circular way? So I've listed 3 ideas I had. The first one, I mean, this is the core of the project of Force, to stop thinking waste as a waste, but to start thinking waste as a resource that should always be kept in the loop. And for that, I think that the circular sustainable product policy initiative of the Commission will be key, because the idea is to design products in a way that they can be rethought, reused, repaired, and recycled, and kept in the circular loop. So I won't talk so much about this one, but I will try to focus on the next one. So the next one will be the right to repair, and I would like to travel with you to Porto, to Ljubljana to start. Sorry, we are going to start in Ljubljana, saying that today less than 5% of waste in Ljubljana ends up in landfill. This is the best figures we have in Europe. 75% of waste is recycled in Ljubljana. Their mantra is rethink, reuse, recycle. And the city brings waste to repair cafes, where designers picks out products where they see potential in. And also people, citizens, can walk into this repair cafe with a broken toasters, for instance, and they can ask to be taught on how to repair them. So the advantages of repair in cities, well, they are quite obvious, they are quite numerous. I'm just gonna list 3. Repairs consume far less resources, so it's much better for the environment, less waste generated, and local job created. So how can the Circular Economy Action Plan of the Commission boost repairability in cities? First, by creating a right to repair that will allow all citizens to request to repair their equipment or furniture, and also to remove all legal obstacles that prevent today repair, resale, and reuse. So what does it mean in practice? It means that durable and repairable products should become the norm. A culture of reuse is essential to boost sustainability. And also more actions are needed to remove non-essential single-use products of the EU market. So that was for the right to repair. Now we are gonna have a look at biowaste, and we are gonna travel this time to Porto. And I'm gonna be quick on this one, because I think Lisbon is gonna talk about organic waste later today. So in Porto, municipal organic waste and food byproducts are collected. It's converted in a compost-like product. It has several advantages. I'm going to name just 2. Environmental benefits, as it contributes to nutrients and to build soil health, but also economic benefits, as the final product, this compost-like product, is sold, and it helps cover the cost of scaling up the separate organic collection. So how can the Circular Economy Action Plan of the Commission boost the reuse of organic waste? Well, this is really about plastic. The Commission should legislate on microplastic to ban intentional release of microplastic, but also legislate on bio-based, biodegradable, compostable plastics, because this plastic contaminates bio-waste and organic food, and it decreases drastically the quality of this compost-like or fertilizer or whatever product that the cities are creating out of organic waste. So there is a huge part for the circular economy to really legislate on microplastics, which would be new, and also to legislate on this biodegradable and compostable plastics, because at the moment there are no real studies that shows that it brings something else than just more litter. Now we are going to talk about circular construction leading to circular and local jobs, and we're going to travel to Helsinki. So Helsinki has a roadmap for circular and sharing economy, and that includes constructions. The city of Helsinki is planning to apply circular principles to planning and implementing new construction and renovation projects. What does it mean in practice? It means implementing modularity, repairability, use of recycled and repurposed materials, but also ease of demolition and reusability, and also foster digital logbooks. So what can the Circular Economy Action Plan do to boost circular construction in cities? The first thing is really to create an enabling framework for the full building life cycle. So currently we have the publication, we had the renovation wave and the EU Built Environment Strategy published, but very good framework, but it needs to go even beyond that. Cities need EU-wide open standard for information on the content of the construction products to support the development of what I call this digital logbook, but we can also call material passport, that will encourage the use of recycled materials in any new construction or any renovation project. Then cities need the sorting of construction waste from demolition or deconstruction to become mandatory. Very important. And the last but not least, reuse and recycling of materials must become financially attractive and more attractive than landfilling. Today, crazy enough, construction materials still end up in landfill because landfilling is often cheaper than recycling. So we need to end that. And finally, I will go to Amsterdam, and I will end up on a sweet note, if I can say. We are going to go to talk about the donut economics. Amsterdam's goal, the city of Amsterdam goal, is to become 100% circular and climate neutral by 2050. So inspired by the British economist Kate Raworth, Amsterdam has embraced the donut model to rebuild in a post-COVID-19 world. The objective of the city is to help Amsterdam thrive in balance with the planet. It means concretely that all public decisions in Amsterdam should embrace the donut economics model since last year. And then the decision was taken. I don't know if you are all familiar with the donut economics. I'm just going to say it very quickly. So the inner ring of the donut sets out the minimum we need to have a good life: access to clean water, housing, energy. The outer ring of the donut sets the boundary across which the humankind should not go beyond without damaging the planet: oceans, biodiversity, freshwater, and so on. And what's in the middle of these two rings is the good stuff, if I may say. It's the dough of the donut. It's where everyone's needs are met and where the planet is not damaged. So what can the Circular Economy Action Plan of the European Commission do to boost donut models? So here it's about supporting the front runners. It's about helping to bring on board those who want to chip in. It's about building capacity and providing, again, the right enabling framework. So we have done a little tour of Europe, very short, sorry. What I want to say here is that overall, circular economy is a very complex, cross-cutting issue. It has been mentioned in the presentation before, but it's also an enormous economic and environmental opportunity for Europe that we should embrace and that we should use it to recover from the crisis. Cities need a strong support to test and scale up innovative solutions all across Europe. Because honestly, without cities at local level, without the grant, the ambitious of the European Green Deal and the ambitious set in the Circular Economy Action Plan will never be achieved. So a couple of challenges still remain. I've listed a couple, and it's absolutely not exhaustive for sure. Financing circular business models, collaborating across the value chain and all across level of government, understanding that circular economy needs to be thought in integrated and systemic way, supporting behavioral change and much more. But I will conclude here saying that cities can do a lot by themselves to speed up the transition. We have seen what they are able to do during the COVID-19 crisis. And I think that the Circular Economy Action Plan is a good framework to enable cities to deploy their full potential of circularity. But I will finish by saying that to make sure that all of that happens, is very important that the Recovery and Resilience Facility money, we're talking about 700 billion euros, are directly allocated to cities. It's crucial to first recover in a sustainable way, and second, to start now building the cities of the future that needs to be digital, circular, clean, and inclusive. I thank you a lot for your attention and for the opportunity to take the floor today, and I would be happy to answer any question you may have.
Louise, thank you very much for this provocative presentation. And as we're waiting for questions, both from the audience, or also if some panelists have questions, we'll have 10 minutes for discussion. But perhaps I can just kind of pick up on some of the topics, and I think one of the key findings of the kind of force partnership has been on this specific role of policy and governance, and specifically to what extent can legislation be more circular in its kind of in its structuring, and you did mention the crucial role that at the transnational level, how do we regulate out microplastics from the value chain are key determinants. My question is, when you have these progressive agendas, and specifically at this time when Build Back Better, is an important, policy message that drives a lot of progressive agendas. How do you push the circular economy agenda, if you think about it in competing terms from other agendas which are progressive, whether it's the resilience agenda? How do you move up this specific agenda on the kind of policy cycle in one sense?
Thanks a lot for your question. I think they are all linked, and we shouldn't have to choose between one agenda or another one. The fight was more back in March last year, if you remember. Should we focus on recovering from the crisis and forget about the European Green Deal? And I remember with my colleagues at Eurocities fighting to make sure that the European Green Deal first remains on top of the EU agenda, and second, it becomes the motor of the recovery. So I don't know if circularity, if we could say that the progressive agenda should fight to be the highest up on the agenda or on the priorities. Not at all. I think they are all interlinked. We cannot talk about climate without circularity and without biodiversity. Everything is completely linked. And especially when we talk about circular economy, we realize that it's difficult to know where to start, because everything is absolutely linked. So I wouldn't go to say that how do we push for having circularity higher up than climate or biodiversity or any other progressive agenda, but how do we make sure that those things are the highest up on the agenda of the recovery plans? And this is why cities will have a huge role to play in making sure that the national plans comply with the EU objectives, which are green, circular, inclusive, and digital.
Thank you, Louise. I mean, perhaps one other interesting point that you mentioned, and you brought up Kate Raworth's donut model, which from my understanding, what this does brilliantly is rethink how we measure success, whether in our national or city economies. And I think one of the kind of key dimensions here is to what extent are we failing in terms of achieving some of the outcomes of the circular economy because we have the wrong measures of success, both at the business level in terms of how we measure output or growth rather than net growth. How do you think we can influence change in terms of measurement? And you mentioned the construction sector, and I can just think of the way that projects are typically assessed in terms of value, whether it's a kind of 20-year life cycle of the building, when we deem when this is a successful project or not. How do we influence change at that level of remeasuring or preventing the mismeasurement of success?
I think it's also a very good question. Thanks a lot. Circularity at the end is a kind of a complex topic because it's cross-cutting, and this is probably why measurement is not so easy, because it requires us to go a bit out of our comfort zone. But I think the work done in the fourth project, for instance, or all the projects related, for instance, you were talking about circular construction, so let's go on circular construction, on how to measure the embodied carbon in the full life cycle of buildings, for instance. All of this needs to work on some lesson learned, and then be able to go to the policymakers and say, like, this is what we have noticed, this is where we should measure, this is where we think we're not going in the right direction, or this is where we have legal obstacles because of the current EU regulations. And you have lots of EU projects at the moment. I'm thinking of the Big Buyer Initiative, for instance, working on zero emission construction, that are doing that. They are working on this project, extracting lesson learned, extracting policy recommendation, and then help going to policymakers to say, like, we have an idea about how we should measure, or we should measure differently, or we should adjust the policy and the EU regulation in order to include and integrate everything which is needed to go beyond what we do currently in circular economy for construction, for instance.
Thank you, Louise. And I guess, there is a kind of, central role in the process of standardization, whether it's standardization of products that you mentioned earlier, or standardization of measures that, could be legislated at the EU level to kind of, to help all of these different streams. I think this is very important. I think we have, Mette wants to also ask a question on the donut model. Mette, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Salas. I just want to highlight that here in Copenhagen, we are also working on setting up the donut economy for Copenhagen. We started last year and we're still working on it. So I just want to say that, yes, we are also trying to develop a donut economy. And on your other question, a second question to Louise, I also want to say that, well, the whole transition period and why is the circular economy is not being implemented, because it has so many obvious advantages. But I think in many cases that it's also because of the regulation. We know, for example, back in the early 70s or thereabout, we set a lot of taxes and requirements on energy and water usage. And now we can see that we have developed a lot of products that actually help save water, to save energy, and they are now sold and exported to other countries. So I think also to develop the whole system, to develop the right solutions, the innovative solutions, we need some help from the regulators in order to set some requirements, and they should dare set the requirements for companies, because then they will actually innovate and develop these new solutions. So that is at least a place to start. But that's a comment. Thank you.
And if I can just finish,
Louise, yes,
by saying,
and I think hold your microphone closer.
Yes, sorry. And I think the EU regulators need you in the same way that you need the EU regulators. They need you to spot, there's barriers to the implementation of circularity in cities. And this is why I think dialogue between the industry, dialogue with the cities, with the EU policymakers, the national governments is key if we want to overcome these regulatory barriers, but also if we want to finance the circular business models and to really implement circular transformation of our societies.
Thank you very much, Louise. And I'm also a personal fan of innovation coming out of regulation. So there's definitely future scope for progress there. Louise, thank you so much. We will need to move on to the next section. But again, if you're able to stay and participate in the discussions, that would be greatly appreciated. So we'll now move on to an organization called the Circular Economy, which will be very familiar to a lot of you. And we have 3 speakers that we will try to hear from in the next 20 minutes. Anne-Enrique Duma, Jordi Pasquale, and Noah Bars, who will be speaking about the circularity gap. So welcome all.
Thank you very much. My name is Anne-Enrique Duma. I'm Director of Cities and Global Alliances at Circular Economy. I just posted a small thing in the chat for anyone who wants more information on the donut economy. But before we dive into real examples in an Oslo business region, my colleagues will take you through that. I would like to speak to you a little bit about the Circularity Gap Report. It will just take a couple of minutes. And as Louise eloquently said before, you can change what you measure. So we fully agree with that. So on a yearly basis, we launched the Circularity Gap Report, and we've done so yesterday. This year, we've linked it to climate. And before I will talk to you about the importance of measuring the circularity gap in our world, the global X-ray of the world, we would love to share with you a small film video. Thank you very much. So the Circularity Gap Report is a report on the global state of circularity. We measure this every year. And to give you the number, the circularity gap globally is 8.6%, which means that basically 8.6% of all the materials we use flow back into the system, which leaves us with a massive, massive gap. And that gap is a gap we need to close. And this year's report has been linked to the theme of climate change, because I will tell you in short what this report is about in just a couple of minutes before we dive into downscaling what we really can do on the circular economy at a local and regional level. So in only a few short years, we've established the important voice in the global discussion. I think that's really critical. By establishing the metric how circular the world is, and we anchor circularity in the center of many of these urgent challenges of the 21st century, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, sustainable consumption, human prosperity, and so on. So this year's Circularity Gap Report has a very strong message, and that message is we can close the emissions gap, because as you know, we're working towards the Paris Agreement by 2030, and we need to keep the world between a well below 2-degree path by 2032 to be specific. And circular strategies are so exciting because they build on top of current policies and national climate pledges. And just to give you a sense of how important a circular economy can be to the climate agenda, current commitments that are made by nation states, countries all over the world, only brings us 15% of the way to achieving a well below 2-degree pathway. The circular economy, a global circular economy, can deliver the other 85%. And for those who do not specifically know, material management is very strongly related to the embodied emissions. So that's where the 85% come from. This year's emissions gap report expresses that urgency about the state of our planet, really talks about the commitment gap between what we say we can do and what we need to do. A circular economy is a practical concept with a global scope and should be the missing piece to close the commitment gap. So while our circularity gap help put the circular economy on the agenda. It's all about action. And that's what the amazing cities here have been working on over the past 4 years. And I've been very lucky to follow that process. So to close this, action has to be made on a local level. So we've also downscaled the circularity gap methodology to a national level, to a regional level now. So we've measured the country of Austria, Norway, the Netherlands, but we're also measuring and providing a circularity gap at the moment for Quebec, the province of Canada. We can do that as of this year at a city level. And that provides us with a baseline from where we can start monitoring every couple of years whether we're truly moving the needle to close that gap. So these areas remain core to our organization. Circular Economy, we're about 50 people based in Amsterdam, a not-for-profit organization, over 25 nationalities, and working globally with key partners such as the World Economic Forum, UN Environment, with Kate Rayworth, and many, many other organizations such as Eurocities, hello Louise, such as C40, ICLI. So these are the cities that really are the game changers. So I'm extremely happy to hear from all of you what you've been doing in the past year since the last update. So I would love to hand over to my colleagues, Noah Baars and Jordi Pasquale. They've been leading the project in Kongsvinger, the business region close to Oslo in Norway. And they'll take you through some real life examples how we can close the gap. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Annerike. And well, very happy to be here with you today. My name is Jordi Pasquale, and I work as a project manager together with Annerike and Noah in the cities team. And as Annerike said, we believe that after this presentation of the Circularity Gap Report, we think it's also quite insightful for you to know the work we do in cities and regions in closing the circularity gap in order to reach the Paris targets and the Paris targets in the Paris Agreement. And this case, as Annerike said, is the case of the Kongsvinger region. And the scan we did in this eastern region close to Oslo, which focused on the built environment value chain. We focused on this built environment value chain as the region had the ambition to really transform the sector and the value chain towards circular economy, and thought that circular economy should be really in the center of the strategy towards the years to come. If you can go to the next slide. Well, our scan and the approach we take in supporting regions in accelerating the transition towards a circular economy normally follows 4 steps, 4 phases in closing the circularity gap. The first one we took in the Kongsvinger region was the understanding the system and setting the circularity baseline. So having this really systemic approach in understanding the system. Secondly, we looked at the material flow and stock analysis to really have this evidence-based that can really support the decision-making locally. Then, in order to set circular strategies and a clear vision that could finally lead to the action plan and the more action-oriented aspect of our work. And it's very important to say that we try to follow this collaborative and multi-stakeholder process with all the local actors and partners that are really the decision makers. So from the private sector, public sector, civil society, knowledge institutions. So the first step, as I was saying, focuses on understanding the system, right? And the main question that we address and that we normally address with cities and regions is, what is my region's current state of circularity? That's the main first question that we want to answer through our work, in order to really build on the strengths and what's already happening in the region, and really bring the value that circular economy can bring, in this case, to the built environment value chain, and build upon what's already there. And as I said, we wanted to really understand the region's built environment value chain and set its current level of circularity. And as I said, and you can see, by really engaging with the stakeholders, local stakeholders, that could really bring us all this information in order to set this baseline. And what you can see here is one of the end results of this first analysis, which is the circular built environment value chain. Together with our team, we were able to really visualize how the circular built environment value chain looks like. From, as you can see in the visual, the material extraction, manufacturing of products, assembly, design, construction, use, deconstruction, and waste management. So really looking at all the different steps or stages that the built environment value chain takes into account when delivering its activities, and not only looking at construction or design. We really needed to have a holistic approach. And then, as you can see, also how the circular economy and where the circular economy has a role and can really help in closing the loop, from recycling, refabrication, renovation, maintenance, and reuse. So that really gave us the systemic approach to this project in Kongsvinger. And then, as a second step, as I said at the beginning, we looked at the material flows and stocks of the built environment. So what is the resource metabolism of this system? That was the second key question, and here is where the most analytical and evidence-based part of our job actually happens, which is crucial in order to really inform the local stakeholders and in order to make decisions. Because as also we normally say, we are an external party that brings information and evidence for the stakeholders to make decisions locally. And in this visual, what you can see is actually the material flow analysis of the built environment system in the Kongsvinger region. And a very similar picture it could be drawn from Prague, from Copenhagen, or Lisbon, or Barcelona, or any other built environment chain throughout Europe. In this case, you can see basically the system from left to right. On the left side, the inputs, the different resources that the system needs to use, consume, remanufacture in order to operate in a given year. So the energy, metals, minerals and chemicals, biomass, mixed materials, water, in order for constructing residential buildings, non-residential buildings, and infrastructure. And then in a given year, I believe this was 2018, the data that we use in order to draw this visual, we can also see how many resources come out of the system as normally waste. So on the output side, on the right side, how many resources come out. So you can see again, metals, minerals and chemicals, biomass and mixed materials, and how are those being treated? In this case, mostly by being recycled, backfilled, or incinerated. But also, as Annelieke also mentioned, we also can see at the greenhouse gas emissions that are coming out of this activity and from the different households and residential buildings, and also the water. And this analysis, as you can see in the small boxes, enables us to identify where are the main impacts and challenges that the system is facing. In this case, I could refer, for instance, to the low value treatment of wood, which was huge. It was mostly incinerated instead of maybe being reused or recovered. But we also saw that most of the partners and the players in the system were struggling to reuse wood because of the legislation that was in place. But also we could look at the consumption side, so the input side, where you can see how the purple flow is actually the biggest chunk, where the non-renewable materials are actually being consumed, as if you could think of concrete, asphalt, or any other type of minerals and chemicals. And then this identification of challenges actually helps us in connecting how the circular economy could actually help improve the system that you have in front of you and improve its environmental performance, we could say, by, for instance, increasing the use of secondary materials. And those are the little blue icons that you see.
Jordi, can I just interrupt for a second? This is very interesting. We just have 5 minutes left for the presentation in order to also have a Q&A.
Absolutely. Now, I think it's perfect to hand it over to Noah, who is going to explain the remaining of the project and the questions that we try to address.
Hi all, thanks Jordi. My name is Noah and also work as a city analyst for circular economy. Sorry if the sound also turned on after the movie. I saw that it started playing another movie, but I think I was muted on time. I'll keep it brief. Together with Jordi, I conducted the Kongsvinger region scan. My honor to tell you a little bit more about phase 3 and 4, so the next phases. During phase 3, the question, what circular economy strategies can deliver best results, plays a central role. And based on the material flow analysis that you just saw, we identified challenges and we developed a few opportunities with different strategic directions in them. So without surprise, you'll see circular design was one of them. And how can you, for example, design for deconstruction or how could you design for low energy consumption over time? The second opportunity that was identified was increased use of secondary materials, for example, through circular tendering or the creation of a digital marketplace. And the third opportunity that was identified was the increase of high value management of residual construction streams. Think, for example, more higher value recovery of wood, as Jordi just mentioned. Lastly, shorten the value chain. I also heard it earlier, embodied emissions. In Oslo, there are already multiple initiatives and policies for carbon-free construction sites. How can you electrify the construction site, for example? And during a workshop, we assessed the impact and the feasibility of all these opportunities to then vote on the ones that we thought would have the highest impact in the local Kongsvinger context. Then those strategies were taken into the fourth phase in which we co-developed these strategies into action plans for pilot projects that could be scaled and implemented. So really translating these circular strategies into action plans. And one of the projects was about using demolition materials as a resource. Important stakeholders were within the value chain were identified, such as, for example, the engineer as the party that can execute the material audit to determine which materials are out there and which ones are fit for a next life. And the deconstructor responsible for disassembling the materials in such a way that they can actually be reused. The material processor assess and process the materials so they can be reused. And finally, the builder, the one using the secondary materials for new construction projects. In the case of Kongsvinger, this was for a project called the Circle House, an initiative for a livable and optimal circular building. So really trying to create this most circular building. Then for the Circle House project, multiple donor buildings have already been identified, for example, for their wood components. So this consists of 6 schools. The local waste manager, Geert, together with other local parties, signed the commitment for the implementation of this project, and preparations are well underway. And I think it's good to know that this is only one out of the 3 pilot projects developed under the Kongsvinger region scan process. The other 2 focus on a digital marketplace for secondary materials, with firstly a focus on furniture, and the other one is focusing on circular procurement training across all 6 different municipalities that are part of the Kongsvinger. That was an information overload. I hope this all still made sense. And I also hope this gave you some insights. And if you have any questions, please let us know now or read the report for more info, and don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you very much to all 3 of you, and what a fascinating process. We also have a question from the floor that I would like to take, but just some general, perhaps reflections on Enrique's contributions. I think the role of benchmarking, both internal benchmarking when a city will compare on an annual basis its circularity gap, I think has a lot of potential, but also, the role of external benchmarking when cities start comparing themselves in respect of their progress. I think there's a kind of, a lot of scope for there, and, to what extent you think this benchmarking might lead to positive competition between cities is an interesting dimension. And my second point is more about what is very interesting with your approach is that it's cross-sectorial. So unlike the forced partnership, which we will hear now, where we had 4 specific material streams, you were open, for example, to choose what should this city, for example, choose as its target sector for influence. And in this case, you chose the construction sector. How does a city choose which sector to focus on? How can your framework allow that? And then we'll take a question from the floor.
So I will speak about your first question, and maybe Jordi, you will take the second question. Your first question about benchmarking and positive competition. This is actually a very interesting and also good question, because we thought it would not be the case. But actually we see and have validated in the last couple of months the need for a digital platform on a country level, as countries want to compare themselves with others. We are also in the process of digitalizing that circle scan approach that Jordi and Noah just spoke about. And we see the need from these cities through the user, let's say, interaction continuously, that they would like to know how other cities are doing. So there is a, let's say, healthy set of competition between cities. And I think the cities here may validate that. So I would say it's still healthy. Yes. So maybe I hand over to Jordi for your question around the cross-sectoral approach and how cities choose their sectors.
Indeed. I mean, I believe, as Luis said before, circular economy actually encompasses all the sectors. So this is why we believe working in a cross-sectorial approach is the way to go to really accelerate the transition and make a meaningful transformation. In the case of Kongsvinger, indeed, the focus was on the built environment value chain. Because that was the wish of and the focus of the region when we started working with them. However, in many other cases, as the case of Prague or the case of Amsterdam back in 2015, they needed also to know where to get started. So our scan, our process also allows in phase 1. So we focus on the phase 1 of the steps that we presented. We then focus on identifying what the focus of the city should be, or the city wants it to be, by doing a socioeconomic analysis where we look at indicators on an economic level, social level, and environmental level, together with the policy agenda of the city, to take this somehow systemic approach. And then by engaging with the local stakeholders and running workshops, we identify and select the sectors that the city and the different stakeholders want to focus on. So again, presenting information for them to decide what the focus should be. And we normally focus on 3.
Thank you, Jordi. We have a very interesting question from the floor from Nigel Hurst, and this really gets to the nitty-gritty of how do you implement some of these ideas. So Nigel asks, I work in contracting, and a large issue is the use of some of these old materials. because there's a risk component associated with that. So who takes the risk when reusing old materials? Contractually, Nigel says we want new materials which have a warranty. Old materials often do not meet these current standards. So how do you go about that?
My initial thought was like the engineer obviously makes the initial assessment, but then I would say that the material processor has to sign off on them. And I think safety should always prevail, but I also sometimes feel that it's the safety argument that is made to kind of prevent new innovation. So I also think that we should be safety, of course, but also see where is their potential to also not, well, you want to have the guarantee, but I feel that there is more space for innovations, I'd say.
Thank you very much. I think we will kind of keep this question throughout our 2 days together. In terms of time, we need to move on. Can I thank you very much again for your contributions, and I'll now pass the floor on to Mette for the general findings of the force collaboration. Mette, over to you.
Thank you very much, Savas. We have, of course, after 4.5 years, we have a lot of findings on this project, and we've tried to. I think we have more like 50 findings from the project, and now we've tried to condense it into 10 so that they are presentable, you can say, we have organized these, of course, well, I would say that over the course of the rest of the day and tomorrow, we will dive into the, you can say more of the specific findings from each of the 4 materials, and also on what we have learned from these 16 partnerships. But if I am to say synthesize what have we, what are the takeaways from these 4.5 years, I will try to give you a brief introduction to those. So I would say if we look at the first group that we have on our findings relate to citizen behavior and awareness raising. And we can say that if you're a city and you organize simple or an easily understandable collection scheme, that can increase the amount that you actually collect. And we can see that from Copenhagen as an example, where we started out with a collection scheme for rigid plastics only, and when we revised the scheme to all plastics, both rigid and flexible, and also both packaging and non-packaging, we saw an increase in the total amount of 30%. So if it's easily understandable for the citizens, it's also much easier for them to separate their waste, and you can have more amounts. And of course, as part of this, the easy collection schemes and the awareness raising, if you can have some good communication campaigns and make it lively and understandable, if you can use children, of course, that can also act as a good multiplier for your message. A second finding we have is on this is if the city engage in the awareness raising, and if the city can say take on an active approach to the communication, there is some good potential to be found. For example, in the city of Lisbon, they have introduced a composting scheme for the citizens, and as part of this introduction, they have carried out training programs for the citizens. So when they were provided with a composting bin, they also had a couple of hours of training, and this whole setup has introduced a very nice composting network, and it has set up community composting and organized it in grouping, so that there is a nice network here to be found among the citizens. And it is mainly the citizen of the city who has facilitated this setup of this scheme. And Lisbon also found that that actually it doesn't have to be very expensive to communicate to the citizens, that they have used social media and word of mouth, and they turn out to be among the best and most effective means of communication. We also see that that there actually is a high demand for secondary, or not secondary, but second-hand products. And in the city of Hamburg, they have set up a reuse shop where you can buy products that have been collected or handed in from citizens, collected by the recycling stations or handed in from the citizens. And there they sell it, and they set up this shop in a nice way, and they present the goods in a nice way. And we see that there is a high demand for second-hand electronic and electrical products, especially for, you can say, electrical products like various tools and also lamps, but also other kinds of electrical products. So there could be there is an interest among citizens to buy second-hand products. Another group of our findings is related to business models, technology, and innovation. And here we have worked with the plastics, and we have seen that flexible plastics is actually a very nice material and can be used for many kinds of products. From the outset, we had thought that, or it was our hypothesis to see if flexible plastics was actually a recyclable product, because many claimed it not to be. But we have produced 10 different products, and with the flexible products or plastics, and it is actually a very nice product. However, we also see that it's probably not one of the materials that are good for a closed loop recycling, so that the plastic bags will not become plastic bags, but they may turn into pipes or chairs or other kinds of products. Another finding is that we see a potential there is a potential to increase the reuse of wood, and as Circular Economy just said, that there is a low value in the treatment of wood, and we see more or less the same thing here in this FORSA project. We see a high recycling rate, mainly through panel boards, but there is a high potential of using this wood or recycled wood, collected wood, for different purposes. For example, either from craft or from, you can say, fences or terraces or other wood uses. So there is a potential to find new uses for recycled wood. And some of the new promising market applications are in building materials. That can be used as a kind of building products, as I said, for fences, for terraces, etc. A sixth potential or finding from the project in the business models, technology and innovation. We see that both biowaste but also wood can actually be used in producing the molecules, the basic elements of everything, and they can be used for other products. So you can actually take all these molecules and then use them to build other products. For example, from biowaste in a lab scale, we have produced a single-cell protein, lactic acid, succinic acid, and these different acids and proteins can be used in the pharmaceutical industry or in food, if you want to, which is a bit, you can say, revolutionary, and it can also be used in various industrial sectors. So if the regulation will allow, and when we have tested and developed this kind of solution more, we may actually see that we can have our biowaste turn into food once again, and perhaps not for human food, but at least for animal food. In the project, we have also seen how we can develop produce molecules from wood, and in this case we have produced, again in a lab scale, but we have produced some carbohydrates with different technologies, and then we can use these carbohydrates for green chemicals such as biodiesel, solvents or bioplastics. So again, here we have taken all these molecules and seen how we can rebuild them, so to speak, into new products that has some nice potentials. But of course, this is still, as I said, on a lab scale, and in order to implement these solutions or potentials, they all need big investments and more checking and more development, innovation. But at least now we have proved with this that there is a potential that can be developed further. In a third group of findings on networking and value chain cooperation, we've found that, well, this one may not be surprising, because it was actually one of the prerequisites or hypotheses from the outset of the project, and that is knowing the needs in the value chain improves recycling and reuse. And our whole idea in the project has been that if you gather all the people, all the companies, all the organizations in the value chain and put them around a table, so to speak, you will understand much better what are the challenges and opportunities throughout the value chain. And therefore, if you're able to talk together, you can also perhaps change your product design, you can change your material, or you can change or adapt your recycling process in order to recycle or reuse the product in a different way. You may actually be able to design your product for repair or for dismantling or remanufacturing, as long as you just know it beforehand. And many companies do not know what actually happens with their products at when the product ends its useful life. So therefore, they just carry on with their business as usual. And in Genoa, they have actually set up a very large partnership with a lot of local stakeholders in the wood value chain. And there they have, together with the value chain, they have been able to redesign the collection scheme. They've been able to pinpoint where are the possible solutions in the future, to raise the awareness, but also to spread the know-how on how we can recycle or reuse more wood locally. Finding number 8 is about rethinking your existing systems. And in this case, it's rethinking the existing platform for surplus food, because here the dire which is a Lisbon food dissemination, surplus food dissemination organization. Together with one of our companies, the adapters, they have redesigned what the platform they have, where donors provide their food, for the surplus food to be donated, but also where the receivers can actually sign up in the system. And by making it a lot more simple, more easily understandable again, they have managed to increase the number of donors through this redesign. And the whole web app that they have designed, they have managed to save 1.6 meals, so 1.6 million meals, so that a lot of people can have some food to eat. And in the same time, they've also saved 800 tons of food waste, and they've saved about 3,400 tons of CO2 emissions in the same process. So the whole saving of food and not throwing away food actually has some very, very large potentials, both for people, but also for the climate. And our last group of key findings relate to policy and governance. And as we discussed earlier in the last session, we see that legislation needs to foster circularity. And again, if the legislation sets the right framework and makes it the most attractive solution to actually produce your goods in a circular way, they will be produced in a circular way. So therefore, we need to have the legislation adopted so that it actually matches the circular principles, rather than the old-fashioned linear and economic models. And in Force, we see that, for example, some companies, especially startup companies, they have had difficulties in assessing the secondary raw materials. How do they get hold of them? Because they run in contracts in the municipalities. So how can they use them? And there may also be some restrictions on what they can use them for, because there may be some hazardous substances or some other unwanted substances that you don't want to spread through a recycling or reuse of these materials. But here we find that there may be perhaps some need for more end-of-waste procedures so that the small companies and SMEs can get access to the secondary raw materials. We also see that the electronic products and electrical products needs to be designed to be repaired. And now with the Circular Economy Action Plan, we're looking very much forward to what might come out as the right to repair. For example, will we have what we call more screws and less glue, so that it's easier to dismantle or to separate the different products and repair them and then reuse them. We also see that for the, that was me. How is going up?
Sound? That's better now.
And we also see that already today, those large household products, household appliances, can already be collected from recycling stations and repaired by a private company. And there is a business model here to be, you could say, replicated. And finally, the 10th finding I would like to present here today is that we also need to enable socioeconomic initiatives. Unfortunately, we will have to conclude that in Europe, the costs are often very high for managing waste products, and especially secondary for reuse, but also for recycling, but especially for reusing old products and repairing them. The cost can be very high, but so there is a need here for in the governance to find a solution on how can we do that, and how can we actually collect spare parts from, for example, from electronic products, in order to reuse them in some other products when we repair them. So there are some issues here that needs to be dealt with somehow. This is what I would like to say for now. I would like to hand over the floor to Savas, and yeah, let's have the Q&A session.
Mette, thank you very much. And I think, these 10 key findings, and specifically the categories that you've put them in: citizen behavior and awareness, business models, tech and innovation, networking and value chain cooperation, and policy and governance, looks at the complexity of the issues. I also love the kind of amazing campaigning slogan, more screws, less glue, which I think is extremely effective. Finally, before we go into a short break, I think what is important, and hopefully we'll get this when we go into the different material work streams, is that we get as much of the good news as well as the obstacles from each of the cities. I think one of the advantages of the way that this project has been set up is that it allows comparative analysis. You have exactly the same work streams running across 4 cities, and looking at the differences, whether it's in policy, legacy regulation, citizen awareness, that allows or prevents some of these outcomes from being achieved, is extremely important. And I think huge transferability lessons can be learned from both these obstacles and the advantages of each of the settings. Good. Let's kind of take a break, and we'll make it short because we are slightly running late. So literally just to stretch your legs, and we will reconvene at 30 past. So about 3-4 minutes, and then we will restart going into further detail in the first work stream in biowaste and food waste. So thank you very much, and see you in a couple of minutes. Perhaps we can leave another minute before we restart our conversation. And hopefully the city of Lisbon is ready, the live studio. Lisbon, are you there? So just checking that our colleagues from Lisbon are ready. Good, thank you. And perhaps we can start, and a very warm welcome everyone again to our day one of the force partnership. What I would like now to do is to go into the first of the material work streams, and this is biowaste and surplus food, where the city of Lisbon acted as a lead. And for these specific sessions, and we'll do exactly the same thing for the next one on domestic plastics, we'll first see a film, then we'll have a short presentation, and then we'll open this up for a Q&A. So over to Lisbon.
Ça va? Here.
The Lisbon municipality and its partners engaged the biowaste stream in 3 stages. The prevention stage, an app for food redistribution was developed. To enable the citizens to treat their own biowaste, community and home composting network was established. And finally, new schemes for separate biowaste collection were implemented in the city. And for the first time, separate biowaste collection was implemented at domestic level.
Hi, my name is Valdemar Pires, and I'm the project manager of Lisboa Zero web app. This tool started from the operational model of Dar e Acordar from Zero Desperdício, and the main goal and the main activities is how to deliver and manage in a circular way all the donations of several entities in food. So we manage all the surplus, we receive all the donations, information from the several donors in Lisbon, and then automatically all that information is issued to the receivers and then is delivered to the beneficiaries. In a very simple way, in a very digital way, we deliver the first product that we believe that will be a very good tool to all the city and the several cities in the FORCE project.
Although reducing waste and preventing waste is not produce what we don't need, since we produce food and food for human consumption, the best way of recover and maintaining the value chain this kind of material, food, is to recover all the food that is already in good conditions for food consumption.
I have been involved in this project together with Copenhagen municipality to find possibilities how we can valorize the organic fraction of household waste and at the same time reduce the CO2 emissions from the wastes. They can be converted to biogas, which can be used for heat and electricity, to biomethane, which can be used as a fuel for vehicles and also stored to natural gas grid. It can be converted to single cell protein, a proteinous bacterial protein, which is a very good food or feed for animals. or it can be converted to biosuccinic acid, which is a very broad application platform chemical, which has a lot of applications. Well, we made all these different products, and then we compared them to each other to see their value, both environmental gain and also economical gains. And we found that upcycling the waste to these products is a really very good thing. So we could really get much more value out of our wastes. And then at the same time, upcycle both the organic matter, but also the nutrients, that means the nitrogen, the phosphorus, to high-value products. The vision is, in the future, I can see that the waste that we see as a load to the society nowadays can be a good resource where we can actually upcycle all the components to really very useful products, like proteins, which is a very good food component, or chemicals, which we can use in our everyday life.
Legambiente is a non-profit organization that's dedicated the last 40 years to the protection and conservation of the environment in Italy. Our main objective with the first project was to raise awareness among Genoese citizens about the amount of food waste that's generated daily in our city, and to provide them with useful theoretical and practical tools to successfully reduce it. We involved over 200 young students in activities specifically designed to monitor what and how much food is wasted every day, both at school and at home, encouraging them to pass on that knowledge to their families in order to adopt good practices in their daily lives. We also involved older students, tasking them with producing and distributing an informational brochure to their fellow citizens, and they reached over 1,700 people. What we found was that the younger generations already have a deep sensibility for the themes surrounding food waste and its environmental, economic and social consequences, and they can be an effective go-between for the rest of the population.
In Force, we tested 3 eco-innovative solutions in a neighborhood from the 1960s with a high density and with a particularly poor waste separation behavior. First, a composting project with local kindergartens. Second, a biowaste collection competition with tempting prices for participating tenants. And third, an optimization of the biowaste collection and disposal process in the kitchens and at the waste staging areas.
Well, thank you very much for this video and the clear messaging. So now we have 3 of the stars in the short film, Diogo Lorena and Paola Policarpo in Lisbon, and also Irene in Copenhagen. But over to you, Lisbon, for a short presentation on this specific material stream.
Thank you. I'm going to try to complement a little bit of what we've seen in the video and present some of the results and key findings that we've got together from all the cities. And Paula, in the end of the presentation, is going to talk a little about the app that we've developed in the city of Lisbon. Our main objective when we started in this waste stream was to prevent food waste of going into the bin in the first part. But the other objective was also to, once it was in the bin, to find ways to ensure that it was treated through anaerobic digestion, composting, or other kinds of treatments that ensure the circular treatment approach of the circular economy. So we found out that the main pillars that we had to address was citizen awareness and new technological ways to address these issues. Regarding awareness, in Lisbon we implemented for the first time biowaste separation collections, a separate collection scheme for biowaste directed to the domestic sector. And we also created the composting network that Matt already talked about. And we can see here in the corner, another time where people could sit outside together and close without masks. This is a workshop that we did. We did a lot of workshops where we train the citizens, and nowadays in the later days of the program we moved these workshops online, and they worked very well. This network for me is a transforming experience, because not only we trained citizens to be a part of this network, we gave some composters, but also communities were formed. And we have two types of composters in this network: community composters that are outside, and citizens use them together, but also home composters that citizens use in their own homes, and citizens starting sharing their own composters. And that was an amazing experience for us. We also had food-based comparison campaigns online and face-to-face, and those were mainly to support the implementation of the app that Paula is going to talk about later. Genoa already talked in the video about their experience in the schools, and I think that there is an important aspect of this experience. That first of all, something that we already know, that children are an amazing way to change the behavior of the family and of parents. But also, we know that written information is losing the ability to reach people. But having children to create that information, and they asked children in the schools to create brochures, and then distributed those brochures in 20 different info points around the city, where they also communicated face-to-face with the citizens. Creates a different kind of engagement, and that's something that we find out that we need. We need to engage people in innovative ways, in different ways, to get their attention and to transmit a clear information. Besides that, they also created some tutorials and videos. That is an important tool that people can come back to. And also Hamburg, as we've seen in the video, worked in engaging citizens, and they created an amazing concept of the biowaste collection weeks, where they have these weeks in the particular neighborhood that they decided to engage, where they invited people face to face once again to participate in this week. And people, they've supplied bio beans for the kitchen, adequate to the kitchen, the size of the kitchen. And people were invited to go there to the bio week. They had a card that they would stamp, only like almost like a program, a fidelity program to bio waste. And they would in this week, when they would visit the biowaste collection week, they would deliver the biowaste that they had collected in their own homes, and they could see the quality of what they have done and receive some instructions about what they do better. And I think this is an amazing way of interacting with people. And I think this is something that we can replicate in any part of the world. Regarding the technological innovations, I'm going to Copenhagen explained this very well in the video. The only thing I can add here is that not only we can create new products, as it was said in the video, but everyone knows that in Europe we have in 2023 the obligation of implement the separate biowaste collection in the entirety of the country, all countries, and there is going to be so much biowaste to treat, and we can just can we distribute all the compost, use all the compost that we're going to get from that? Can we burn all the biogas that we're going to get from that? probably not. So it's amazing to see these new scenarios where you're going to get new products with new users in shorter cycles. Just going through some key learnings before giving the floor to Paula, and she can go deeper into the app, the main delivery in Lisbon. What did you learn? User perspective. That's what we just need to focus to really go and beat the barriers to biowaste separation, and to find the solutions to overcome them. We need to talk to the citizens and find out what do they believe it's the barrier to separation. And when they do, most of the times, what we find out is that they don't have the knowledge or the information, or both, to separate correctly. And this is something that we can address with awareness programs. Another thing, and this is a conclusion that we can share from the Hamburg initiatives and the Lisbon initiatives, is that when we are starting a new program, a different program, a program in a new area of the city, we need to have lots of guidance, lots of information in the beginning of the program. That's where you have lots of doubts, lots of things that you need to correct before the behaviors become entrenched. Restaurants have proven a little bit difficult, that the engagement is not as good as we expected, so we need to develop new approaches and more awareness programs. And of course, face-to-face engagement proved to be crucial. And as we talked about already, we can have new products from biowaste, not only gas and compost. And in the future, we are going to have so much biowaste to treat that this is essential. I'm going to give the floor to Paula so she can carry on.
Thank you very much. And Paula, if we could just possibly squeeze this in 5 minutes, so we allow also some of the colleagues from other cities to share their insights as well.
Can I talk? Hello.
Yes, of course.
How are you? So I'm Paula Policap from Dario Cordar. It's a non-profit organization that has an operational model called Zero Desperdício, Zero Waste in English, and also a citizen movement that calls Zero Desperdício. It's a program to prevent and avoid the waste, actively reducing the overall food waste production and CO2 emissions, recovering economic value, and also helping people in need. It's what we do before and during force. Dario Cordar played the role of manager of the Recover network and also facilitator between donors and receivers organizations, training, monitoring, adjusting supply with demanding, and assuming that all the legal and food security requirements are respected, optimizing the overall operational model. When I say legal and food security requirements, I speak about the EU regulations in hygiene and safety food. We work with national authorities in Portugal that are the responsibles for these kind of issues, and also with the European Commission. Our procedures are all available at the European website, European Commission website, and they are translated in English. It's important to say this. The program has rules and a workflow chain, as well as a database with business intelligence functions, which allow an efficient management and monitoring of the network. And in addition, all the donations are registered and categorized in database that deliver important information and economic, environment, and social KPIs. So, saying this, it's about what we do. I'm passed to my slide about Zero Web App. No, the other one. Ooh. So, I have already explained the operational model. It's a circular and collaborative economy program. The value chain, you can see it and read. It's important to understand that our proposal is to prevent waste, not producing what we don't need, but when we produce food for human consumption, it's important not to waste it if it's surplus and someone is in need of the food. And in Portugal, we have this kind of problem. So we must avoid the landfill and the incineration of this food. It's food. It's ethical, and it's very important not to waste food when people are in need of this kind of food and when it is in good conditions. And that's what we do. It's our motivation, and what we work with our eco channel, retailers, vending machines, and other potential food donors, and also waste producers of food, avoiding being wasted. Lisbon Zero Web was concept and build and based on this model that we already have, but introduce a new digital, and turn us more effective and sustainable managers, providing a service to our partners, our stakeholders on the value chain. And this web app, it's as I have wrote in the slide, it's focus on development on the very first digital platform full dedicated to the management and implementation of production and distribution models according to the circular and collaborative concept economy. It can be replicated. It's important to replicate in different cities and contexts, because our context is different from other cities and our other necessities. And also because it can manage just not how we do, but some other circuits streams such as plastics, textiles, medicines, pharmacies, and even non-tangible goods. We are doing this now in Portugal. The idea is always avoiding the waste. It gives also the web app permits and gives a cross-sectional view of the environment, economic and social impacts of food waste avoided. And nowadays, and with the app, they are available. We can communicate, and they are available to our community in Lisbon Zero app. So it's also a powerful awareness tool, because when we know what the data, we just be aware, and that is very important. And it's important, as someone said before in this morning, we just change what we measure, and we need to know what we do and see the impacts. That it's the next slide, to change the way we live, and we need to change and to think in what we are now doing. And as for me, it's important not produce what we don't need. It's my key pointing. For me, it's important, this idea, for all the citizens in Europe and in the world. The planet can support what we are now doing, and so we don't need so much production if we don't need things, because we waste it. So it's the proof that we don't need. So next slide.
Paula, we will need to kind of accelerate this to bring also the other
it's
cities.
just this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the impacts from 1st September 2018 to December, because it's when during the time the web app, Force web app is running with us. So you have what we do. I don't want to read. You just see how important it is. And here in Portugal, these equivalent meals, this food recovery is very important, because we have many people and families, like you can see, supporting beneficiaries and families that has no enough food every day. So this is not the way of feeding people, but it helps feeding people for now and avoiding waste. It's the idea. So this is photos from what we do on the field. So it's just this, I have to say.
Thank you so much, Paula. And I guess the one thing that stands out from both yours and Diogo's presentations is the scale of how many households you've actually reached. I would like now to kind of invite some brief comments from colleagues in Genoa and then in Hamburg. So Stefania and Giovanni first from Genoa. Some general comments or findings from your experience in this specific material stream.
A finding. Hello, can you hear me from Genova?
Hello, Genoa. Very well, yes.
Yes, fantastic.
We would like to understand together how to continue to involve people in food waste reduction during this pandemic context. Because we have two main aspects. The growing of poverty, the growth of demand of food, and the temporary closure of restaurants and canteens.
And supplier.
The supply of food decreased. So that we have to react to this situation, and we have some. We analyzed some models, some different models in this different context, where some models during the lockdown react very quickly respect to the needs of supply of food. Solidarity.
So the issue is that sometimes when a shock event or a long stress event happens, the political or the institutional parts need time to agree on a policy, on a reactive and responsive practice, while the common people and the solidarity group and the power of the people is on their hand. What we experimented in our city was that during this period, during which the forest project running, we experiment an equilibrium at the beginning from the donors, suppliers, and needs, and availability on food disposal, so to reduce also food waste. That was more or less quite also comfortable for the city to manage. Then a shock event happened, and now how day-by-day management, a routine management of a city could be resilient in fostering a future when you will have less surplus, when you have current disposal useful for the people, and especially how to combine the needs of the future with the incredible power of the common ground possibilities. So, for instance, I don't know now, but really at condominium level, urban garden fruits, or really local farmer that could supply, we need to be really, really proactive in enlarging the network of the people and building, after the first project, more dialogue and more circular dialogue among the actors. This is our key findings on these streams in particular.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefania. Let's move on to Hamburg and Britta Peters.
Hi, thanks. This is Britta from Hamburg. I think one of the key interesting points for us in Hamburg was the huge knowledge gap that we discovered with people with regards to biowaste. We did a lot of interviews with tenants, and in German, biowaste is very close with the term to organic waste, and was often misunderstood. And people said, well, no, we don't buy organic food, so no, we don't have biowaste. And we realized, well, we have to start from the very beginning, and in particular in neighborhoods where there are a lot of other pressing issues like unemployment, social difficulties. Waste management is not high on the agenda. People don't think about it, but they were actually open to talk to us. And with us being in the neighborhood, talking to them on several different occasions from different angles and entry points, actually helped to bring this whole waste management topic, in particular bio-waste, somehow closer to them. And then working with kindergarten children actually also helped. We had the theory or the thesis that if we work with children, we can reach the parents. And we tested it, and it actually did work. The kids are very keen. It helped to show them, okay, this is the food you eat. You have the composter in your garden, we produce compost, and then you grow plants, and you have new plants and new food. So to show them actually really all this whole circle, help them to understand, and they took it and they brought it back into the families.
Britta, thank you very much. And the role of children indeed is always very important as influence changers. And it's been shown in many different streams. Finally, Irene in Copenhagen, do you want to add a couple of words from your experience in this stream?
Hello, I'm Irene Dijk from Copenhagen. And I would like to say that technically there are many possibilities, and we wanted to give value on the biowaste. And we actually technically could succeed to make very nice high-value products. So that means now what we need is basically some good stories that people and the citizens can see, well, this is not something we are just talking, it's a reality, and involve companies which can take up these ideas and move on and make that to a reality. So I think this project has come with the basic knowledge. It hasn't created the network. We have learned the lesson. So now we really want to use this network and these possibilities to move on. So that's my comment from Copenhagen.
Thank you so much. And perhaps we can open it up for a couple of minutes for questions, either from the panelists. We have a very practical question on the Q&A in terms of the web app and in terms of the legacy. What will happen with the web app following this specific project? Will this be continuing?
Well, I can answer. The web app is a management tool for us, for Daria Acordar. So it's important. We are going to use the web app, even if we have to adjust, to optimize, but it's an important management tool for us. It gives effectiveness to our network, recover network, but don't forget, well, I'm just speaking about web app, but for example, we have Zero Desperdício, Daria Acordar, has also a program for children and for schools. We have books, as you already said, for speaking about not waste food and what involves the waste of food. So even the web app can be used for share and engage these communities, students, people, not just food donors, but for the other issues about and around the food waste. Because, as I said, our aim is prevent and avoiding food waste. It's not, we are not a food bank.
Yes. Yes. Good. Let me just kind of put a couple of pointers, and again we could come back to this. I think what has been very clear from all of your presentations is this very important role of citizen involvement across the different cities. And the other point, I think, which again has been clear both in the Lisbon and Genoa cases, is making the most out of the current crisis. Is the current crisis opening a window of opportunity for new networks to emerge of how some of this food could be actually used, in times of need, but that these networks last following the pandemic crisis? I think these are very interesting, points that we could definitely come to. But the citizen part and the clear messaging that has come out from this work stream, as Meta said in the key findings, is one of the important dimensions. Good. Let's now move on to our second work stream, and this is in domestic plastics. And here we will go to our leads in Copenhagen. But again, we will start first with a short film and then with a short presentation from our colleagues in Copenhagen.
The FORCA project has helped us with a lot of valuable knowledge, especially regarding the collection of plastic waste. There's a major issue in many cities around Europe regarding optimizing the collection rate for plastic waste. And in the FORCA project, we have tested different ways to optimize the collection. One of the key findings that we have is that we can increase the collection rate by 30% actually, by including flexible plastics in the collection scheme. Another key finding is that the flexible plastic is actually really good for material recycling. We are able to recycle the flexible plastic into a raw material that's suitable for both rotational molding products and also injection molded products, and sheet extrusion, tube extrusion, etc. It's not so much that there's a technical barrier to recycling these types of plastics. It's more maybe the market barriers that are in the way of increasing the recycling rate for post-consumer flexible plastics at the moment. Regarding the collection of plastic waste, what we've shown in the FORCA project is that when it's a lot easier for the citizens to understand the collection system, you will collect a bigger amount of plastics. And what we did in the FORCA project is that we expanded our collection scheme so that it didn't only include rigid plastics, but included all plastics. And we told our citizens in Copenhagen, now you can sort all plastics. If you think it's plastic, put it in the plastic waste bin. And when we did that, we got a collection rate increase of about 30% from 1 month to the other, which indicates, of course, that the easier it is for the citizens, the more plastic waste you will collect.
L'utilizzo dei rifiuti di plastica è stato possibile solo attraverso un'apposita autorizzazione per lo stoccaggio e il trattamento di specifiche quantità di rifiuti secondo specifiche procedure di fine rifiuto. Questa autorizzazione è stata acquisita attraverso l'uso della città metropolitana. Durante la produzione delle bobine, quindi in fase sperimentale, ci siamo accorti che le bobine realizzate attraverso questi materiali non sempre potevano acquisire il 100% del rifiuto. Infatti l'uso del PET e il HDPE era difficile da introdurre all'interno della produzione e ciò renderà difficile utilizzare tutti i rifiuti al 100%. Nel corso del progetto siamo stati in grado di produrre diversi gadget di plastica, sempre inerenti il tema della città di Genova. Dalla nostra esperienza abbiamo appreso anche che i gadget stampati in 3D dal punto di vista commerciale non possono competere a tutti gli effetti con quelli prodotti in massa, facendo un esempio di origine asiatica. Il valore aggiunto però incorporato ai nostri prodotti è quello del design, del fatto di essere prodotti in una città di Genova attraverso una struttura e delle esperienze innovative. Gli articoli quindi hanno diverso carattere, che è quello del design e della personalizzazione per specifici scopi.
In order to produce cleaner waste streams and improve the recycling of plastic, we installed on all our 12 recycling yards a separate plastic foil collection in these orange grid boxes. This material, LDPE, is a valuable material for recycling, but it needs to be very clean and without any impurities. The plastic market is very volatile and good quality is required. Another key issue to produce clean waste streams is to strengthen the awareness amongst the citizens and start at the schools with education about correct separation and recycling.
So again, thank you very much for this very clear messaging. And now we'll go for a short presentation by Jonas, looking from the city of Copenhagen's perspective.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for this opportunity to discuss with you the very important issue of plastic waste management today. My name is Jonas and I represent the city of Copenhagen. I've also had the pleasure of being the work package lead for the plastic waste management related activities in the FORCE project. Now, before I start sharing some of the results from the project, I just want to start with the question of why. Why is it that we need to enhance circularity within domestic plastics? And I know that this question might seem somewhat trivial to some of you because of the great amount of attention that plastic waste has had these last couple of years. But I always feel that it's very important to start out by asking the question of why it is that we do what we do. I brought this figure, which I'm sure that a lot of you already know. It comes from the New Plastics Economy Initiative. It basically shows the production consumption system for plastic waste, which, as you can see, shows that we have a very linear system where we produce a lot of plastic waste, we consume a lot of plastic waste, but we fail to actually collect the plastics for recycling. Most of the plastic still ends up in landfills, it goes into the environment, or in best case it gets incinerated. Only very little of it is collected for recycle, and even less is actually recycled. Moreover, we have a situation where we see an exponential growth, as with most other developments in this modern age that we have. We see an exponential growth in the consumption levels of plastics. And that, together with the first figure, provides a kind of grim image of the future. Moreover, for the plastics that we actually do collect for recycling, what happens mostly is that that it's downcycled. We fail to recycle it into the same types of products that they originally were. In terms of the post-consumer plastics, which we have focused a lot on in the FORCE project, we have a lot of food packaging, we have a lot of washing detergent bottles, etc. that comes from the supermarkets. Only a very, very, very little share of this actually returns to the supermarkets in new products. Most of it is downcycled into other types of products, which will only enter the circle once before they probably leave the system. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of creating circularity of domestic plastics, both in terms of improving the collection rates, in terms of improving the sorting, and in terms of improving the washing and recycling, and especially maybe also in terms of changing the designs of the packaging so that it is recyclable. So what did we do in the FORCE project? Basically, here you see a photo of the test sorting facility that we have in the city of Copenhagen, which has played a very important role in the FORCE project lead partnership. Here, the mode of operation has been that we have done a lot of different collection pilots we have tried a lot of different methodologies for increasing the collection rates for plastics in the city of Copenhagen, both household collection of all plastics. We have done trials on public space sorting points. We have done trials at selected retail stores, and also done trials on how to sort out the plastic waste from the residual waste and actually do recycling of this waste stream. Now, for all the collected plastics, we have run through this test facility in order to get detailed input about the waste composition, how well we can actually sort it using near-infrared scanners, how we characterize the waste stream, what type of products are actually in the waste stream, which of these products are suitable for recycling, which are not. And that has also allowed us to really dive into the question about design for recycling. We have also created a lot of output streams from this waste sorting facility, which we have sent to our partners in the project, our industrial partners, which have used the sorted waste for washing and reprocessing tests, and also for production tests of new products. So we have basically gathered the whole value chain and gotten a lot of detailed information about every step along the chain in order to focus on how we can get the best possible product in the end. Our main focus has been on the flexible plastics, as the flexible post-consumer plastics, as they constitute probably the most difficult part of the post-consumer plastic waste stream in terms of recycling. It's more difficult to sort the flexible plastics. They tend to be more contaminated. They tend to contain a lot more colors and other types of ingredients, which makes the recycling more difficult. We have also had local partnerships where we have done other types of development activities relating to plastic waste. First of all, in Hamburg, we have focused on collection of films at the city's recycling stations, and that has been a very successful implementation. First, a trial collection scheme at a few selected recycling stations, and then full implementation throughout the city. In Genoa, the focus has been more on the local level startup company support, focusing on how we can use post-consumer plastics in a 3D printing process, and how we can use the post-consumer plastics as a raw material for a new startup. Then lastly, in Lisbon, we have focused more on the citizen awareness aspect, using urban art pieces to increase the focus on the effect of plastic waste. So what did we learn? Of course, I can't share all of the many results from this part of the project with you in this short period of time that I have. I can say that we have a lot of very technical results and also some more general results. I have included a couple of the more general results, but I would also love to discuss with you the more technical questions that you may have in the following Q&A session. First of all, we've learned that we need to start focusing in on what's actually in the waste stream. Instead of just focusing on the different polymers that we see, that we collect, and that we sort, we need to also see what type of products are in the waste stream. And the reason for this is that we see, as I said in the beginning, it's a too high level of downcycling, where we take perfectly good food packaging or other types of products from the supermarkets and downcycle. This can change, but we need to work on new ways to develop improved sorting solutions for this. A second aspect is regarding the post-consumer films. We can recycle those, and you can see the 10 different types of products that we have produced during the project, containing post-consumer PE films. All of them are made from 100% recycled plastics. Some of them only contain partly post-consumer and then partly post-industrial. Some of them are 100% post-consumer flexible plastics. It is indeed possible to recycle post-consumer flexibles into a raw material that can be used for a lot of different production methods, including rotational molding, sheet extrusion, tube extrusion, and also injection molding. But we do not see a way forward in terms of material recycling of plastic films into new plastic films of the same quality. So this is an issue of downcycling. And that also means that the companies that do produce the plastic films, they are basically reliant on other stakeholders, other companies to clean up, you can say, their mess afterwards. We've also learned a lot about the citizen behavior, as has been an issue throughout the project. Basically, what I want to say here is citizens really want to contribute, especially when it comes to plastic waste, because most citizens are aware of the different challenges we're facing in terms of getting good waste management system for plastic waste. And the easier it is for them to participate, the more they will participate. The other thing is that we need transparency. We need to show the citizens what happens with the plastic waste that we collect. How do we sort and recycle the plastic waste, and especially what type of products does the plastic waste end up going into. Then we've also had some learnings about the difficulty for local startups to gain access to the raw material. As it is now, the system, you need a very, very huge amount to have a business case for a sorting plant or for a recycling plant. That means basically that most of the plastic waste materials go to centralized facilities, and therefore it's quite difficult for local startups to get access to the raw materials. And that means that we don't get the local inner loops in the cities that are a central part of the circular economy. So I just wanted to also include one last slide about what is next. We've had a lot of time now to work with the plastic waste issue, and we have a lot of in-depth knowledge, I would say, in the city of Copenhagen and also in the consortium as a whole. And so it's interesting to just reflect on what do we see, what's coming next in terms of plastic waste management. And we definitely see that there's an increasing focus on quality of recycling. There's more and more plastic waste getting collected. So we are dealing with the problem of collection for recycling, but we are still not dealing with the problem of downcycling. We need to focus a lot more on the quality of recycling and a lot more on returning specific types of products from the waste stream to the same types of products. That could be food trays, could be one. It could be detergent bottles. It could be personal care and hygiene products. We also see that there's a great level of disruption coming in the horizon. I've just included 3 different examples here of disruptive technology that we see starts entering the market, and that has a lot of potential also in terms of allowing us to increase the quality of recycling. The first one is tracer technology, which we see enters, there's a lot of different big projects now involving a lot of the private stakeholders. Tracer technology basically is when you put some type of tracer on the packaging, and then you can sort the packaging based on that tracer. For instance, it could be a chemical tracer, it could be a digital watermark. That would allow us to actually sort out specific types of products, and not just polymer types, but specific products. And it would allow, theoretically, big companies to gain access to their specific products and being able to close the loop in that way. So that has a really big potential for disruption. You can see an example here of packaging that has actually this type of tracer technology. This is a digitally watermarked packaging. What you see on the right side of the packaging is what the consumer see. What you see on the left side is what the sorting equipment would see. And that has a lot of coding in it, but you can't see it with your naked eye. Only the sorting equipment could see it. And then you can encode different types of information in the information tiles. For instance, who made the packaging, what's it made from, how should it be sorted, etc., etc. The other new development is within chemcycling, chemical recycling, where you can actually take different types of polluted post-consumer plastic waste and recycle it into new virgin grade materials. That has a lot of potential as well. It's very energy intensive technology. However, it has the potential to create virgin grade materials. Then lastly, AI, image recognition software and robotics is also an issue which we see will play a major role, and it is increasingly also entering the market already. That basically means that you have a computer and image recognition software that can recognize specific objects in the waste stream, and then you can couple that to a robot arm of some sort, and it can take out the specific types of products from a mixed plastic waste stream. That will allow us to get a lot more clean waste stream and a lot higher quality of recycling. We also see that design for recycling plays a major role, and an increasingly bigger role, and that is the way it should be. We want to see a system where the packaging and the plastic products that are not designed for recycled are probably more expensive to introduce into the market than the ones that are actually designed for recycling. And lastly, I just want to mention that there will be a focus on residual waste sorting as well. The main reason for this is that in bigger cities such as Copenhagen, such as Hamburg, Lisbon, Genoa, the other cities of the project, with a lot of high-rise buildings, it's very difficult to achieve the collection rate only by the necessary collection rate, only by introducing household collection. We need to also sort the plastic waste from the residual waste stream, and we are starting to see technology that can actually do this. So I'm looking forward to any questions. That was me from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonas, for the summary. I'd just now like to bring some of our other colleagues in this material stream to kind of add any further insights from their experience. So Diogo in Lisbon, Yannick in Hamburg, and finally Ilaria in Genova. Perhaps, Diogo, would you like to say a couple of supplemental words on your experience?
Can I?
Yes, we can see you very well.
I was waiting for the sound, sorry. Well, as Jonas pointed out, we worked in awareness with using plastic waste to produce public art, and initially we thought of using waste collected in a separate collection scheme. And our conclusion is that this waste stream was a little bit too contaminated. Not contaminated, but it was too dirty to use in this way. And our main conclusion is that there are other plastic waste streams that are already pre-processed and can be quite useful to reuse in this way. In the case of plastic used to urban art. So there are a lot of plastic waste there that is already pre-treated and ready to reuse in novel ways. And another of our findings in this stream is that the use of plastic waste in art was again a really good way to engage people. As in the biowaste stream, people are oversaturated nowadays, and we need to get novel ways to get their attention and to transmit the message to them. And by showing them the waste in a new form, in a captivating form, we were really able to get their attention. That's it.
Thank you, Diogo. And let's go to Yannick in Hamburg.
Sure, thank you. So, like Jonas presented, we installed this separate plastic foil collection at all of our recycling yards. And what we learned there is that even though we're collecting a very clean product, which is like white or transparent plastic foils that presents a good product for recycling, it's at the moment not economically viable because the plastic market is so volatile that the prices we expected, they can't be met, and that the efforts to handle the waste, to transport it, is at the moment not outweighing the prices or the income we got. And apart from this additional collection scheme, we have the dual system here in Germany. So we separately collect plastic waste in households as well. But still one main focus is on awareness raising and education. And again, starting with children in schools and kindergartens. So what we did is we developed an educational program together with the initiative Precious Plastic, which is a grassroots initiative. And together with them, we did some education in schools with hands-on activities to show the value of plastic and what can be done out of it if we separate it correctly. And we also had this recycling machines at the space, at the spot, so the children really could get new products out of the separately collected plastic. Awareness raising and information about the collection schemes in place is very important, because like Britta also said, is that it's sometimes just a lack of information, and we need to engage the people.
Thank you so much, Yannick. And finally, Ilaria.
Hello. The pilot activity that we developed in Genoa actually was a challenge, especially from the legislative point of view. As a matter of fact, we didn't have problem in finding a startup company to cooperate with us in this field. But the main issue was to allow them using plastic from Genoese collection, because it was considered waste, of course. And you had to avoid any suspect of illicit trafficking, which seems crazy. Yeah, it makes smile, but it took us almost 2 years to convince the metropolitan city that the craftsman activity was useful to test it. And they gave us a permit, which was very difficult to obtain, as well from the point of view of filling forms, because the forms were meant for big industries. So crazy things like the insurance, which were supposed to be over 100,000 million euros, because it was for a plastic plant, not for a craftsman activity. Let's say it was extremely challenging, but extremely interesting, because we also had the chance to test, in the end, we gave them plastic from the city collection, mainly bottles or caps from schools and offices collection, let's say the cleanest stream. And they tested also extruding machines. They were helped by TICAS and the University of Genoa for the plastic mix to use. Because when they say, oh, okay, this is a spool made of PET, it is not true, because it can't be 100% PET. So, I don't want to go to take too much time from the audience, but in the end, when they actually produced the gadget, then it was a problem with the market. And because citizens or tourists have to pay more for a gadget made in Genoa without plastic than from an Asian product with the image of our maybe the lantern or monuments. So it's been extremely challenging. but helpful for the project, for the key findings, which was number 9, Mette showed in the introduction. And what was interesting was also seeing that the other cities were encountering the same problems as us. So legislation needs to help circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilaria. And I guess what I would like to do is just to borrow again from Mette's excellent findings and summary and focus rather than on citizen behavior, although this stream again, has proven that that is a very important point with Copenhagen doing this experiment and seeing how collection actually increases if you allow for mixed plastics to be collected together. But I would like to focus more on this kind of business models and the market creation for these secondary materials that I think a lot of you have been engaging with. I think the Genoa example is interesting, and although Ilaria, you say that it's been so difficult to compete on a price point with linear, let's call them this, linear plastics, coming from abroad. The fact that there is a kind of awareness or value generation effect to make sure that how can you increase the value of this more circular products is actually a very interesting area to explore further. And again, here is it through branding that you can increase this value. I think has vital lessons for other cities that want to engage in this space. Perhaps a question that I would like to ask all of the participant cities this year is, to what extent is aggregation a challenge here? The fact that if you have businesses that want to source these raw materials, these recouped source materials, the problem of supply is an issue. That because of how waste is collected and often through municipal agencies, there isn't simply enough of a consistent supply to aid some of these businesses to use these materials. So is that an issue? And perhaps some of you want to engage in that question.
Well, if I may say something, as I work for the waste management company, let's say that finding the material is not a problem, because well, we tested in the beginning the road bin collection, and of course it wasn't suitable because the plastic is dirty. But there are many other collection streams, and they're not, I mean, only Genoese. Of course, in all Italy and Europe, we have a specific collection for schools or offices or other places in which you can actually collect only bottles, plastic bottles or plastic caps, which have a chemical composition which is perfect to be used as a second raw material. The problem is when we touch something, I mean the waste management company, it becomes garbage. And then you need end of waste. Otherwise, it's illicit trafficking. And it's crazy, but it's you can't even do prevention, because when we asked the pupils of a school to bring their bottles to their shop, I mean the place where they were actually selling items and producing spools, well, the public body told us, oh, wait. They can't collect garbage because it's something people want to get rid of, so it becomes garbage from a legislative point of view. So I am really, maybe I'm annoying, but the problem is we have to be able to work on prevention. It can't be illicit to give my bottle to a craftsman's and they produce gadget, because it's me giving them something, a value, not garbage.
Yes. Ilaria, this is very clear. Interestingly, this is something that we will find again, I think, in the electronics stream, electric and electronic stream tomorrow, where you have wrong classifications from legislation that doesn't actually allow you to make the most of this product. Can I thank the speakers again? I'm sorry that we have to cut this short, but we need to move on to our next session. But we've taken notes of all of your findings, and again, we will come back to this tomorrow. So thank you, Yannick, very much, Ilaria, Jonas, and Diogo in Lisbon. Good. So let's move on to our final session. And again, this will be more of a moving away from the work streams as part of the FORCE network. And we'll be looking at, from a more general perspective, the role of planners and urban planning in the place-based circular economy. And we're very happy to have Frank Deont, who is the Secretary General of ISOCARP, to give us a presentation on this. Frank, a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Savas. I hope I am loud and clear.
You are.
And that my presentation is on your screen already.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So yes, I will try to be brief. I realize I have a bit, I'm singing a bit a different tune than most of you. I am most interested to know actually how many participants in the panel, but also in the audience are architects, planners, engineers, working in the built environment, working in urban planning. I have no idea, but I guess not so many. Although the city is the talk of the town, the circular city, it was introduced in the beginning. So I want to shed my light a little bit on the place-based component of circular economy, or the place-based framing of circular economy. So, well, I represent the International Society of City and Regional Planners. So obviously, urban and territorial planning is our focus. But you know, to anticipate the conclusion, we are not dealing enough with the issue of circular economy. So I am learning a lot, and I'm happy to transfer that knowledge within our own community and to establish a better exchange of views and collaboration. Okay, next. Whoops. Okay, so I have only 3 points. The first slide is just to frame a little bit circular economy in what I call the global policy framework on urban and territorial planning. The second is an example from the planning practice. And the third is what I would say the role of urban planning and planners in circular economy. If you look at the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals 2030, so we're in the last straight line of implementing them, the decade of action. Well, you see that circular economy is mostly mentioned, let's say, in SDG 12, 9, and to a lesser extent in 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities. So it is mentioned, but to very limited extension. Yes, this is also the case in the new urban agenda, and this is really the most important policy agenda available now, and maybe available in human history ever, since we are more than 50% urbanized. So this agenda is about 50% of the population, and it affects 100% of the population. Yet, if you look at circular economy, it's very, very limited. There are 3 citations. There is one, that clip I made out of the illustrated version with the recycling logo, not even, I think, the appropriate representation of circular economy, but okay. So it is there, but it is very limited. So you still have a lot of work to do to really pitch circular economy better within that broad framework of sustainable urban development and planning. The same goes for the international guidelines on urban and territorial planning. I would say this is a little bit our small pocket Bible. It's only 25 pages, 12 guiding principles. It's very generic, but very principled, very useful in our daily planning practice, as long as you are able to translate this from the global scale to the local scale. Yet, I have read it 100 times because I made a draft handbook to implement it. There is no mention at all of circular economy. In my handbook, I mentioned once or twice circular economy, but again, it is not yet well rooted. On the positive side, I see in the planning practice more and more projects that are relating directly to circular economy. One close to my heart because it's the city I left before coming here to Athens, was the city of Antwerp. Most of the cities where I live start with A, I don't know why. But Athens is doing a pilot project on the circular neighborhoods, circular new South district. And yeah, it's quite comprehensive. You see there an image of the neighborhood, of the new, it's a greenfield development close to the Palace of Justice, the big river, and on the south side of the city center. And it deals with all these issues you see there in the left column. I will not read that out loud. You can read for yourself. So this is really looking at the scale of a new district, a new urban district, and looking into several aspects of what they consider as part of the circular economy. So including, for instance, also mobility and smart homes. Yeah. I have more slides about this, but I don't have time to go through it. You can check it for yourself. If you Google it, you will find it. Circular New South or Circular South. And you see here, you know, I just picked out that slide with what are the innovative aspects of that approach, Circular South. It is really a city district approach. So it's not a city approach, because a city like Antwerp is a very complex thing, layered over time from the Middle Ages until now. So with very old neighborhoods and with very new neighborhoods. So you can't have a kind of one size fits all approach. It really needs to be broken down per neighborhood. In this case, a greenfield, but you also have to look at a difficult or a separate approach for brownfield neighborhoods, historic neighborhoods. So city district approach, community-driven approach, they actually work with the future residents. Yes? Mix of online and online nudges, mix of technical solutions, and all streams involved: energy, water, waste, materials. So I don't know really about the details, the results, but it looks to me quite promising. So that brings me to the last slide. What is the role of urban planning and planners in circular economy? Well, you know, is it new? No, it is actually, you can well connect to the idea of the metabolic city, the metabolism of cities by Richard Rogers of 1999. You know, is one of these ideas that says the city is not a collection of places or spaces, it's a collection of flows. Yes, and we have to also plan for these flows. But it's not because it exists already for a long time that it's well rooted. I think 80% of the planning practice is still about land use planning, static planning, zoning. It's all about zoning and not enough about streams, about flows. So it's still an undercurrent, but thanks to you guys and others, especially also in the mobility sector, we are catching up with the idea of planning of flows, and this should be one. But you will have to help us, and we can also help you making your approach more place-based or place-relevant, because we have the tools to integrate it on a local scale through a local development plan or a municipal development plan. So I would like to finish with the idea planners. We consider ourselves not anymore as the master planner, you know, designing it on a desktop and then presenting it to the people as, you know, the best possible plan we can come up with. It's really all about facilitation, communication, exchange of views, and that's maybe the advantage of the planner, that we are, you know, we can pull all the strings together. But we have to know where are the strings, and I'm sure we should also pull that string of the circular economy into what I would call circular planning. So it's an open invitation. We have to learn more, but maybe there is also a bit of spillover of what we're doing in what you're doing. So that would be my very short contribution. Thank you, and very good luck with your Congress.
Thank you, Frank. And if I could kindly ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can see our participants. Frank, thank you so much for your presentation, and I would invite also some of our earlier participants in the day to join this wider conversation. Perhaps, Frank, we could begin this with just a general reflection on the work of ISOCAP and also in the urban planning profession. To what extent do you think that urban planners are more geared for the greenfield or new developments and embedding some circular practices within the new projects versus influencing existing neighborhoods and more on what households are actually doing in existing neighborhoods or districts?
Well, I don't have figures if a majority of planners is more keen on doing circular economy in greenfield developments. For sure, it's always easier to start from scratch and to really integrate a circular economy in the development of a new neighborhood. Retrofitting is much more difficult. That is for sure, especially when it really goes into new buildings, new materials, into smart city components. The retrofitting, we know for sure, I think it has been mentioned, that demolishing a building and building a new one is cheaper than renovating it in a more sustainable, energy efficient way. Yet, it's our duty to do so. So, as a planner, I am certainly not advocating that we can only should apply circular economy in greenfield development, and we have to be extremely cautious with greenfield development. By the way, New South is actually not entirely new greenfield. There were a couple of developments, but it wasn't a community neighborhood. So there were industrial activities going on. So they have been recycled. And what I understand is that the buildings that have been demolished are reused in the building of the new neighborhood. So in general, we should focus more on brownfield development, on retrofitting, than on greenfield. But if you do greenfield, then you have no excuse not to include circular economy at the core of the development. That is a bit the answer.
Thank you, Frank. And perhaps one final clarification, and this perhaps is more geared towards the role of planners in their capacity in the planning application process. When new developments are being suggested or promoted in different cities, of course, this would rely very much on the local context and the planning powers of each of the municipality. But to what extent do you think municipalities can add parameters or dimensions in their assessments on circularity before approving projects? How realistic is this?
Yes, well, the idea of monitoring indicators is one that also percolates through planning. For too long, we were just developing a plan without any metrics, what to achieve exactly, without. So that is changing. If you look at the SDGs, the New Urban Agenda, they are trying to establish for each objective indicators. And that means that before you start any project, you need to have your baseline indicator. Where are we now? You have to look into where should we be in 10, 20, 30 years time. That is the short, medium, long-term planning scenario. And what will be the milestones and how will we get there and how do we monitor them? So this whole data-based planning is still, in many countries very in a startup phase, I would say. It needs a lot of data, it needs a lot of resources, but you can start with a limited number of data. The danger is that you overdo, overkill, and nobody sees anymore the forest through all the trees. So it's finding a sweet balance, a sweet spot. It has to be also accessible for the public. So these indicators must be, and it must be also in a way that it is interesting enough for technocrats to really work on it, but it must be understood also by the political class, so they know what they sign up to and they live up to, and they are held accountable. It's much more easy to hold decision takers accountable on numbers than on intentions. Yeah? So it is a collective duty, but it is still under development, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank, and I guess this also reminds us of the roles that urban planners, if you think about it in terms of their value chain, and think about the presentation we had earlier today from Circular Economy that looked at the built environment value chain and seeing where there are opportunities for engagement across the different sectors. Yeah. Frank, thank you so much for your insights in this, and bringing and increasing the scale of analysis. I'd now like to pass over to Mette for some final conclusions before we close off the session. Mette, over to you.
Thank you very much, Savas. And I can see there's a lot of interest in this discussion on planning and circular construction. And in that case, I might like to do some bit of a commercial for another Horizon 2020 project that we're carrying on, which is called Circuit, because it's called circular construction. There will be a lot more about requirements to cities in how they can promote circular construction on that project. But to highlight and to finalize today, I would like to say a few observations from today's discussion. We can see that from our findings that the citizen engagement is high. Citizens really do want to participate and are engaged in sorting of waste, in reuse, in repair. There is a very high interest among citizens in order to do something for the environment, you can say, or to promote all these circular concepts, although they may not know that it's called circular economy, but it's just good housekeeping. But it's also the city's role, I would say, to inform citizens about what's happening, both to engage the citizens in the waste collection and the management, but also to inform citizens about what actually happens. What happens to their waste and how is it recycled? Another thing is that, another observation is that all the results that we have in the Forza project is that they have been achieved through networking and cooperation in our value chain. So in achieving all these results, we have cooperated with a lot of partners throughout the value chain. So it's recycling companies, it's manufacturing companies, it's research institutions, cities, waste management companies. So it's just to say that we have been through the value chain and that it is important to achieve results. I would also say that for example, for business models, what we see over and over again in a project like this is that the economy is playing a very huge role, and that we also see there's a major gap between what is economically feasible and what you can say should be done from an environmental point of view or from a socio-economic point of view. So somehow there's a need to link this and find the right business models, or to make the right incentives for the economy to actually act as we would like it to do. We also see that there's a lot of there's still a need for more investment in some of these areas in order to develop the you can say the innovative and the new solutions, so that they can be marketed as new products. And finally, as we discussed earlier today, again, I'd like to highlight that the regulation is important for companies and for cities to set the right requirements in the waste management, in the design of products, and in the treatment throughout the value chain. And yes, you are right, Savas. We as cities, and from this project, we need to feed our results into the work of the policymakers, so that they can adapt or change the regulation so that it adapts or it's better suited for the circular economy. So I would say that with these words, I would like to thank you, Savas, for today, and I would like to thank you, the audience, for staying with us throughout the afternoon. And I hope you have enjoyed the presentations as much as I have. And I hope to see you all again tomorrow, when we will have another 3 hours of presentations from the project. So thank you very much for this afternoon, and the floor is yours, Savas. Thank you.
Well, just some final conclusions before we drop this. Just a thank you to our colleagues in Lisbon, in Copenhagen, Hamburg, and Genoa for their participation and insights. I know it's very difficult to bring together these findings coherently in the space of 30 minutes, so it was a bit cruel on our behalf, but a lot of these findings will be available online for the purpose of transferability. So if there are participants here in this webinar from other cities who want to deploy some of these solutions, then I think there is ample literature that will be produced from this. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central European time, we begin again. We'll look at 2 further material streams, this time with wood and electronic and electric waste, which are also extremely important, and some very interesting insights from there. Until then, have a very good afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are, and see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.